If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days.
There we have it, the show stealer from last night. Good morning, everybody.
I don't think the Democratic Party should be surprised that so many Americans believe yada, yada, yada. It is time for us to start over with people who have not taken donations.
And there we have it, Marianne Williamson. We'll get to that whole brouhaha, as the Drudge Report calls it this morning. Clash of the Libs. I want to remind you, coming up on Friday, we'll be at Stanton Healthcare, their pre-grand opening to their official grand opening, which will be Sunday in Meridian. Really want to thank Brandy Swindell and the crew there for their commitment to life, their commitment to the Treasure Valley, and be recognized internationally for doing such great things. We are honored to be a part of that. And we urge you to support Stanton Healthcare. They do such great work for kids and moms and dads. Joining us now is Kevin Mooney, investigative reporter from the Washington Free Beacon. And, you know, the Beacon is a publication digitally that has grown and continued to grow throughout the years. Mr. Mooney, a pleasure to have you on this morning here in Idaho.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
And look, with a first name like Kevin, you're rolling, brother.
Yeah, of course.
Remember the old days, there weren't a lot of Kevins. Now, I guess imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Everybody seems to be a Kevin. But, Mr. Mooney, you've written a new piece. We're talking about green activists with ties to the Chinese and the Paris Climate Accords. But your thoughts in doing this piece, just how influential the Chinese seem to be in almost every aspect of our lives?
Well, I think what you really need to understand is what the China is doing, using these environmental groups really as front groups, is they're essentially using their own judiciary as a weapon. They're taking advantage of these open-ended environmental laws we have that allow for an endless chain of litigation. And they've been using green groups as conduits to file lawsuits against no less than the U.S. military, aimed at constraining and restricting American military exercises in the name of environmental protection. And in this particular story, there was also an angle here with the Natural Resources Defense Council. It's headquartered in New York, hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. They took advantage of their close ties with the Obama administration to lobby the U.S. to get into the Paris Climate Agreement, while leaving China completely unfettered, which, of course, was China's strategy.
Boy, that's ingenious, using our own legal system against us to handcuff our military.
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple of angles here. I mean, there have been proposals on the table to put a limit to some of these environmental lawsuits. I mean, the lawsuits make lawyers rich, but they do nothing for the environment. And I think the environmental argument is really a phony. I mean, China's tearing up the coral reefs in the Asian-Pacific region. Their military is all over the place. They're the world's number one polluter. And yet, if you look at the Twitter feed or any public statements from the Natural Resources Defense Council or other green groups, you don't see them criticizing China at all. I mean, go look for it. But they criticize the United States. That's just sort of a variation of sort of the left-wing blame America first. But what I really want to drive home is that the environmental argument's a proxy for other things, and they're not really serious about the environment, at least as it's defined in the dictionary.
Well, and you bring up a great point, and we always seem to wonder about this here on KIDO Talk Radio, Mr. Mooney, that people, will, as you mentioned, go after the United States for our, coal or what have you, and yet I'm sure, as you know better than most, breathing the air in China or any type of environmental restrictions or protections for people just don't exist.
No, they don't, which is why it would be a lose-lose. If you really read through the provisos of the Paris Climate Agreement, it really should be called a treaty, but they call it an agreement. The goal is to hamstring and dramatically restrict carbon dioxide emissions. Even if the U.S. did that, it wouldn't make any difference for the climate because India and China would just roll along. So I say it's a lose-lose, severe economic impact with no climate benefits. It's really about a political agenda. It's really about, number one, an anti-capitalist mindset, also attacks on U.S. sovereignty and independence. But it's also China and their environmental allies working to constrain and restrict the U.S. while allowing China to sort of grow its economy and its military.
Well, when we take a look at their military, how would you judge it? I know it's a little off the beaten path here, but, how much are they gaining? We hear about hypersonic missiles and these islands that they're building in the Sea of Japan and the South China Sea and everything else going on over there.
I think the good news is that we're still very much a match for China. I think we still have some technological advantages over China. They've stolen some of our technology. Their espionage is very aggressive. But what I keep saying is the fault, dear Brutus, lies in ourselves. It's up to us to reform some of these laws. So, like I say, they're not open to our strategic competitors. And so I think going toe-to-toe, we still have some advantages. But if we shoot our own selves in the foot with these very flawed public policy decisions, and if we allow, it's almost silly and cartoonish to think about it, but there's a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, Natural Resources Defense Council v. Winter, named after a former Secretary of Defense, where they sued to constrain Navy sonar exercises and Navy testing off the Asian Pacific regions, claiming it would damage marine life and the environment, which was a phony. But of course, if they had succeeded in that case, they lost the case, thankfully. But if they succeeded, just think what that would mean. China could just proceed without any kind of deterrence in that area, and we couldn't use our sonars to detect Chinese submarines. That's really what the angle was.
It's difficult, though. By the way, Kevin Mooney, our guest from the Washington Free Beacon, investigative reporter, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. It's a challenge, though, when you take a look at how China has infiltrated our businesses. In Idaho, I believe they're our second largest trading partner. We have offices. The state of Idaho has offices in China. We have the Confucius Institutes that permeate throughout our universities and such. And all those resources, all those institutions are used by the Chinese government to gather information. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. I'm glad you mentioned the Confucius Institutes, because I think finally some of our policymakers are waking up to that. And changing some of these arrangements in higher education. So that with China, it's always a very legal, very shrewd strategy to take our own institutions and turn them back against us. And we've been a little back on our heels and a little unaware. And I think finally you see some key members of the Senate, like Marco Rubio, just to name one, and others, who are finally sort of, rising to the awareness of how dangerous this whole situation in China has become. And it just takes the right set of policies to prevent China from exploiting our own resources.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I'll keep harping on this. I think, number one, we need to reform the National Environmental Policy Act, which was started in 1969 as sort of a very benign environmental impact statement, and has morphed and changed with a lot of left-wing warriors getting a hold of it just to file lawsuits and make themselves rich. I think you need to limit the environmental lawsuits, number one, because there's a national security side to it. So take a look at the NEPA Act, take a look at the Endangered Species Act. Again, some of these are taxpayer-funded lawsuits that was meant for citizen action when the feds were pulling down the job, but they've been hijacked by environmental groups. And just put a limit on it, and just so you can't have an endless chain of appeals. And these cases have to come to some closure. That's number one. Number two, get serious about the Foreign Agent Registration Act. We have federal laws that say that if you're lobbying for a foreign government, you have to disclose that. There may be benign reasons for doing that. For example, former members of Congress register as foreign agents. They're doing foreign exchange programs, which they rightly view as mutually beneficial in some areas, but they're at least disclosing that and saying, I'm lobbying on behalf of a foreign government for something I think is good for both of our countries. But the Natural Resources Defense Council should be registered as a foreign agent, so the American people and our elected officials know who they're advocating for.
Well, you can ask Paul Manafort about the importance of registering for that one.
Well, exactly. Well, my point is that if you're going to enforce the law in one area, you need to enforce it across the board.
Mr. Mooney, we can find your work at the Washington Free Beacon. Anywhere else?
The Daily Signal, the multimedia publication of the Heritage Foundation, National Review, and who am I forgetting? The American Spectator and several others.
Ooh, the Spectator. Love that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Kevin Mooney joining us. American Spectator. By the way, American Spectator, American Thinker, great sites for long, thorough, well-written pieces, which really wasn't what happened last night. For entertainment purposes only, 580-5436. Probably my favorite Democrat last night was this guy.
To me, the real test of a campaign is how you do in the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary, because that's when, real human beings actually cast their votes, and that matters.
Yeah, John Delaney, a unknown Maryland congressman, first guy in his family to go to college, used a union scholarship, I think, to go to Columbia or Harvard, one of those bougie places, ended up creating enough wealth that he's worth $65 million a year, and he's a lib.
If John F. Kennedy, when he said we should go to the moon by the end of the decade in the 60s, someone could have said to him, well, you're not saying we should go to the moon next month, so you're not being ambitious enough. Right. So it's a dishonest, kind of lazy response.
Clash of the Libs. And before we get to Liberty Linda here, by the way, join the conversation now. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. It wouldn't be a wake-up without Crazy Bernie.
Two things. They will be better because Medicare for All is comprehensive. It covers all health care needs for senior citizens. It will finally include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses.
But you don't know
Second
that.
of all.
You don't know that,
Second
Bernie.
of all.
You don't know that, Bernie.
I do know, and I wrote the damn bill.
Apparently, according to Claire McCaskill later on MSNBC, Bernie wrote a lot of bills that went nowhere. Liberty Linda on the right side with Kevin Miller. Good morning on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. So you're going to get the Biden bite in Boise. He's going to visit there, and that's all there is. He will leave the Biden bite on Boise, and it's going to be Biden bite Boise from then on. How about that?
I just hope he doesn't try and smell my hair.
Well, you never know what's going to happen
Sure.
when Biden comes to Boise. Anyway, Kevin, last night I actually watched a Democratic debate, and they all looked very distinguished, men in their suits, the women dressed very nicely, and then they began to speak, and I began to cringe. And I began to think, and these people are running for president? That was my actually thought that I had last night. And so anyway, a person begins to be frightened, as I was last night. And the things that came out of their mouths, sometimes I wondered if I should have tuned in or not. And that's my true feelings about it, Kevin. You obviously watched it as well.
I did. And we're going to be playing the cuts all morning long, taking the calls. You know, it's funny because you had the moderates trying to say we're not going to win this way, and the crazy, wacky, zany libs being the crazy, wacky, zany libs. And quite frankly, I was happy to hear, Elizabeth Warren say this.
There is a lot at stake, and people are scared. But we can't choose a candidate we don't believe in just because we're too scared to do anything else. And we can't ask other people to vote for a candidate we don't believe in.
Is it me, or is she trying to enunciate too much?
Yeah, I'm personally scared that one of them may win. And which I don't think will happen.
Right.
But you sit there with your mouth open listening to them like, you can't believe what they're asking, what they're suggesting for our country, what they're offering for our country. And, to me, Kevin, it's scary. That's all I can say. And then you have President Trump come out, and he makes such sense. He has transformed our nation. He's given people jobs. Everything he has done, I believe, down the line, has made our country greater again. So that's what I wanted to say this morning. And, I'm interested to hear what the others are going to say about the debate last night and just what comes about from your show today.
Thank you, Liberty Linda.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning. We'll take your calls on the debate. Plus, coming up next, first it was licking ice cream at grocery stores. Now it's peeing on potatoes. Whatever happened to civility at the supermarket? If that doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And coming up, more reaction to the clash of the libs. That was night one. Night two is tonight. And of course, it's kind of good to, maybe get some asparagus, get some potatoes, maybe even get some chips before they outlaw it and watch the debate. Sometimes it could be monotonous and boring. And tonight is going to be a big night for Joe Biden. One side, Cory Booker. On the other side, Kamala Harris. And it will be bash the Biden night. But anyway, before we get back to politics, you're going to love this one. First, it was licking ice cream in the supermarket. Now it's peeing on potatoes. Just as the whole let's lick ice cream and put it back trend died down, it seems we've got a new one in the works. A woman in Pennsylvania is wanted by authorities after allegedly taking a wee on potatoes at a West Mifflin Walmart. Now, I don't know if she was wearing a skirt, pants, what have you, but wow. A Walmart, and you never notice whether it's YouTube or what have you, it's always these wacky things at Walmart. Their entire YouTube channel is dedicated to this. A Walmart employee told police that they saw the woman urinate on the produce. I'm pretty sure that's how you tend to your potato crops. This incident comes after several class acts have been busted opening up ice cream containers in stores and putting the ice cream back in the freezer. Why do people do that? They're on video. Do they really think that that's doing something? I don't know. Which begs the question here. Why do you think so many people have been putting their bodily fluids on grocery items lately? Perhaps they need some type of mental health check. And the other one, what would you do if you saw the ice cream or potato incident in front of you? I will tell you this. If I saw somebody taking a wee on the potatoes at wherever, I don't know what you yell, urinator. And the other thing here is, will you skip the mashed potatoes at dinner tonight? Ha, 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 ha. KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:26. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller. So what is it? Marianne Williamson. I don't know how they get these people in these crazy, wacky, zany debates. But last night she had a few doozies. Let's share it for you right here. One of them, when she's talking about the president being some type of psychic force.
My response on the Flint water crisis is that Flint is just the tip of the iceberg. I was recently in Denmark, South Carolina, where there is a lot of talk about it being the next Flint. We have an administration that has gutted the Clean Water Act. We have communities, particularly communities of color and disadvantaged communities all over this country who are suffering from environmental injustice. I assure you, I lived in Grosse Pointe. What happened in Flint?
Environmental injustice? Man, everybody's coming up with these new words. Environmental terrorism, economic injustice. It's amazing how we've lived so many years without these new terms that now permeate throughout the liberal vernacular.
Would not have happened in Grosse Pointe. This is part of the dark underbelly of American society. The racism, the bigotry, and the entire conversation that we're having here tonight.
By the way, didn't the Flint water crisis start under Obama? Wasn't that Obama's EPA? Since they always say that it was President Obama's economy that launched this great economic revival we've had under President Trump. The Flint water crisis was going on under Obama's EPA, if I'm correct.
Do you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country? Then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days. We need to say it like it is. It's bigger than Flint. It's all over this country. It's particularly people of color. It's particularly people who do not have the money to fight back. And if the Democrats don't start saying it, then why would those people feel that they're there for us? And if those people don't feel it, they won't vote for us, and Donald Trump will win.
Right. For those of you that love the social media, she's the biggest trender ever on Google right now. But let's face it, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, with the exception of Donald John Trump, they all say the same thing. They all make promises. We're going to repeal the grocery tax. We're going to balance the budget. Oh, we're out of money. How did that happen? Well, we can't repeal the grocery tax. We have all these people coming in, but we can't fix the roads. Well, now we're going to fix the roads, and you're going to be inconvenienced. Suck on a lemon. Well, they don't say that, but again, for entertainment purposes only. Coming up, I'd love to get your thoughts on the debate last night at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. By the way, here is Donald Trump talking about Elijah Cummings and Baltimore.
I'm not angry at anybody. The corruption and the graft in Baltimore is probably the greatest in our country, or one of them. Wait, now, he's in charge of an oversight committee. All I'm saying is take your oversight committee and go to Baltimore. You'll learn a lot.
Waking up with a smile, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Doug.
When David Duke ran for Congress, ran for governor, the Republican Party 20 years ago ran away from him. Today, they are supporting naked racism in the White House, or at best silent about it. And if you are watching this at home, and you are a Republican member of Congress, consider the fact that when the sun sets on your career, and they are writing your story, of all the good and bad things you did in your life, the thing you will be remembered for is whether in this moment with this president you found the courage to stand up to him or you continue to put party over country.
There you have it, Mayor Pete last night. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Rachel Sutherland joining us from Fox News Radio with analysis and a preview of tonight's action. Rachel, you're always working. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I thought last night was fascinating, and we got to see some differences between these Democratic candidates for president, especially in health care, but also on immigration. It really opened up with health care. I think it was the marquee issue. It was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, their political siblings. So they were fending off attacks from lesser-known candidates, one of them being a Montana governor, Steve Bullock. He's someone to keep an eye on because he's done well in a red state, lots of Trump supporters. He made the case that he's able to work with progressives. And really sided with former Maryland Congressman, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here.
No worries.
Delaney, who it really was saying, look, this is fairy dust politics. We can't promise all this stuff. We ought to have a public option to buy into this and not force people to lose their health care plan. So a lot of discussion about health care.
Yeah, it was interesting last night. Rachel Sutherland joining us, KIDO Talk Radio. I don't know when she doesn't work, but I'm sitting there watching it thinking Delaney, who really, if you had to pick somebody who epitomizes, I guess, a middle-of-the-road guy, here's a guy who first in his family to attend and graduate college, got it on a union scholarship, went to either Columbia or Harvard, one of the big schools, but started building businesses. $65 million is what he's worth, and said, look, I need to pay more money. I'm a Richie Rich. And it was great that he did get some time last night as opposed to the other debates. And then you have Governor Bullock, who, Rachel, you communicate for a living, and I know you're much more sensitive, much more diplomatic than I am. But Bullock needs to figure out how to complete a sentence.
Well, but that was tough with the moderators, right? They had 60 seconds, and there was a lot of interrupting, and I believe the moderators were saying they were going to be penalized if they did interrupt.
Right.
And so, look, I mean, he wasn't – it was tough to get a word in edgewise. I think Tim Ryan of Ohio had some interesting points, but he got taken down by Bernie Sanders pretty hard when over Medicare for All, when Bernie Sanders was like, I wrote the damn bill. And so that was pretty much for –
Well, and you heard somebody say, quit yelling, Bernie.
Yeah, I believe that was, was it Hickenlooper?
It might have been,
it was. Actually mocked him and said, why don't you just throw your arms around a little more? I thought last night's debate was much more fascinating than the first two rounds about a month ago. So we'll have to see what happens tonight. I mean, Joe Biden comes face-to-face again with Kamala Harris. We understand he's been getting ready for any kind of curveballs coming from her.
That's going to be a tough one for Biden. He's in between Booker and Harris. And you know, Rachel, as a reporter, as someone who does this for a living, this is how you make your living. Not getting into the weeds on these things and really talking about substantial issues, which I thought the Democrats, you know, whether they agreed with each other or not, really had a good back and forth on the issues last night.
I think they did because, again, we were able to see, and I was kind of doing a head count on the Medicare for All. I would say most of the Democrats on the stage do not favor that, or at least not right away. Like Amy Klobuchar is saying, this will take time. This is not something we need to do tomorrow. It's the front runners on the stage last night, Sanders and Warren, that are really pushing this. And Delaney making some very interesting comments about, you know, we shouldn't be the party of that takes things away from people, and making the case that this is going to basically hand the election to Donald Trump. And in fact, Hickenlooper made that point, saying that we might as well FedEx the election to Donald Trump if the Democrats go with things like the Green New Deal. So this is not a homogeneous group as people had perceived. They have a lot of differences in the way that they think. And I think we'll see that again tonight.
Rachel, appreciate you. I hope your voice gets better.
Thanks.
All right. She's a quick draw. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. If you missed the big debate, let's give you the highlights here. The Miller Morning Montage, KIDO Talk Radio.
I have had it with a president that says one thing on TV that has your back, and then you get home and you see those charges for prescription drugs and cable and college.
If we embrace a far-left agenda, they're going to say we're a bunch of crazy socialists. If we embrace a conservative agenda, you know what they're going to do? They're going to say we're a bunch of crazy socialists.
This is an example of wish list economics. It used to be just Republicans wanted to repeal and replace. Now many Democrats do as well.
Second of all, maybe you did that and made money off of health care, but our job is to run a nonprofit health care system.
We are not about trying to take away health care from anyone. That's what the Republicans are trying to do.
This is the left and right thing. New and better is this. Move Medicare down to 50. Allow people to buy in.
You know, I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
You're wrong.
Brian in Napa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Brian. Brian?
Let's start with Bernie. You ever heard of the term lead from the front?
Yeah.
Isn't Bernie a millionaire?
He is.
He wants to basically pay for all this stuff. Well, lead by the front. You want to buy glasses and dental stuff for, all these older people like me? Then do it. Stop trying to take the money from everybody else and take it out of your own dang pocket first. That's called leading by the front. It's ridiculous. I don't even listen to these idiots that much anymore. Because Warren, man, tell us what we can't do. I don't know about you, but I'm a grandparent and a parent. One of the most important things I teach my kids is what they can't do. Like, you brought this one up yesterday. Don't drive and talk on your cell phone. That's something you shouldn't do. I mean, for crying out loud, are we just going to throw every single common sense rule out the window because we've got problems and the government's going to fix all of them for us? I'm sorry. I'm an American. I don't want the government to fix all my problems. That's part of the whole idea of this planet, is to have problems and to overcome them. That's what makes us strong. I just can't believe it. Rules for radicals, create a problem and then blame it on somebody else. I'm going to ask you a question. Who was the government in charge locally of Flint when the water problem started?
The libs.
Yeah, the Democrats. And I love this. They scream racism, 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 racism. The KKK was the freaking army for the Democratic Party back in the day, and now they call us racist. I'm sorry, who was the party that fought the Civil War against the Democrats and the KKK? Can you tell me who that party was?
It'd be the Republican Party.
Right. So I think any American that believes these people are either stupid, brainwashed, mentally ill, or possessed by a devil. That's all there is to it. I know Republicans aren't perfect. Nobody is. But for crying out loud, are we out there with a book of rules for radicals and creating problems and then blaming it on the other side? No. We're simply just stating the facts, and good gosh, if everybody ran off their emotions, what kind of chaos would we be in? Every person on that stage was going based upon emotion. We can't use logic. We can't use facts. We just got to go off of, the government's going to do this for you. The government's going to do that for you. If that isn't socialism, I don't know what it is. That's what I got. Got any questions for me, Kevin?
No, I'm good, Brian. Appreciate you. You're in my prayers every night, brother.
I'm doing better. It's just slow and gradual.
Hang in there.
Okay.
Thank you. And, hey, Brian, go Bulldogs. Let's go to Chance in Nampa with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Chance.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How are you doing?
Living the dream, brother, and you?
I'm doing okay. So I don't agree with a lot of the things the Democrats were saying yesterday, but I think one thing we all have to recognize is they've caught on to the way that Trump plays his game. And that's scary because up until yesterday, I thought Trump had it in the bag for this next election. I'm not so sure anymore. They're not playing identitarian politics anymore, and they were actually talking about issues of substance. Even though I disagree with them, they were issues of substance, and they were a lot more moderate. And that's what they need to do to win this election. But I was wondering what you think about Donald Trump with the issues about Baltimore and stuff like that, and people calling him racist. Do you think that what he is doing is just trying to keep the Democrats off base? Because if he can get them infighting with each other and talking about him, whether or not, orange man bad, so to say, they're not going to talk about substance issues. And Donald Trump knows that he can say all that stuff he wants, and he won't lose his base. And then when it comes time to the debates, he can act a bit more moderate, and he'll win the election. I was wondering what you think about that.
I think Donald Trump has an incredible amount of courage that he's not buckled by anyone calling him a racist. And I don't know if you caught this, Chance, and it's online. There was a TV reporter doing a stand-up last night, and there's a rat in the background in Baltimore. PBS did a big documentary on this 2 years ago. It aired all over the country on the rat problem in Baltimore. Now, the president could have said, well, Mr. Cummings, with all due respect, perhaps you should take a look at parts of your district that is being overrun by rats and such, but he didn't. Now, by the way, Chance, here I'm going to play this for you, my favorite clip of the week.
I'm not angry at anybody. The corruption and the graft in Baltimore is probably the greatest in our country, or one of them. Wait, now, he's in charge of an oversight committee. All I'm saying is take your oversight committee and go to Baltimore. You'll learn a lot.
Oh, man, that's gold right there, Kevin. That's absolutely gold.
Agreed, Chance. You have a great day, sir.
You too.
Pete in Mountain Home, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Kevin, I got a wonderful slogan for the Democrats to counter Trump's "Make America Great Again." We're going to get free health care, free food, free shelter, free housing, free college, free cable TV, tax the rich Republicans, no rich Democrats, and did I mention Flint was run by Democrats? Just like Baltimore and all those. Free. Everything's free. We're giving it to you free. Oh, and we're going to take all your guns away. So their slogan, Make America Venezuela.
Anybody impress you last night at all?
No.
Well, let me give you here. Let me.
You mean with their idiocy? They all impressed me with their idiocy.
Well, let me give you a little dash of Bernie here to wake everybody up.
We need to bring millions of young people into the political process in a way that we have never seen by, among other things, making public colleges and universities tuition-free and canceling student debt.
Thank you, Senator.
The last time we brought in a bunch of young people, and Pete, pardon the listening audience, we're going to sound like a bunch of codgers here, but the last time we brought in all the young people, they gave us 8 years of Obama.
And before that, they gave us 8 years of Bill Clinton.
Exactly.
And you know what? When I read that Bernie had made $1 million on his book.
Well, what's wrong with that? You write a bestseller and you get the money.
Yes, and I wrote him I sent him an email at his Senate account. I said, I know you're a principled socialist from each according to their means to each according to their needs. And I really, really need $12,327. And you've got $1 million. And you know what? Bernie never got back to me. He doesn't want to share.
He doesn't want to share the wealth.
Yeah, I guess and you see that in Venezuela. The rulers there, they have all the money and everybody else is starving to death. And, the great thing about what they're doing in Baltimore is when they turn us into Venezuela, the people in Baltimore will have stuff to eat, all the rats. Because that's what they're eating in Venezuela. If there's any. I mean, they ate all the cats and dogs, so.
My man, Pete.
The only thing left is rats.
How do you think it'll play out tonight, brother?
More of the same. We hate Trump. Everything's free. Make America Venezuela.
I like that. We hate Trump. Everything's free.
And make America Venezuela. Oh, and guns are bad. We got to ban all your guns. We're picking up all your guns now. Because, it's kind of go to a socialist dictatorship when the peasants have guns, because if the peasants have guns, they're pretty revolting.
Ah! You're on fire, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, Kev. Keep it up.
Take care. There we have it, Pete from Mountain Home. Coming up next, an unusual case of a 10-year-old being charged with an assault. You won't want to miss that story. It'll make your head scratch. Kevin Miller in the morning on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. All right, before we get to the crazy story in Fox News at the top of the hour, speaking of crazy, Marianne Williamson again last night, they were talking about reparations. So she's a New Age author, Democratic presidential candidate. Last night explained that the math behind her proposal to pay $200 to $500 billion in reparations to black Americans. See if this math makes sense. She said the present-day value of the 40 acres and a mule promised to former slaves after the Civil War was trillions of dollars. We're up against it right now. We'll get to that in a minute. First, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.